ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to part 4 of, is it episode 4? Is it episode 5? I've lost track. I think it's episode 4
I just say
of
part with guest, so.
part 4 with guest Rachel Rowenson. That works. That works very well.
Eventually we'll figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah. Of Spells and Specialists, I should say the name of the show, Spells and Specialists, where we use magic and stories to teach technical topics and communicate science, which is all of my favorite things in one sentence, which is great. I hope that viewers and listeners have watched and listened to parts 1 through 3. Part 1 is on ecofictology. You can find it here. But parts 2 and 3, where a lot has happened, is over on Clark's channel, who is my co-host, of course, for these lovely episodes. And his channel is The Magic Engineer. Anything else you want to say, Clark?
Nope, that just about covers it. I'm too excited
Okay.
and can't word right now, so we'll see how this goes.
Can't word. It's good for this part about storytelling not to be able to word. Yes, and we are joined by the lovely Rachel, and she has taught us all about systems science and seeing things as a connected system. And I won't go through all of the take-home messages again because you could just go watch the parts 1 through 3. But what we're here for in this part 4 is to take all of that cool stuff and put it in a story and tell a story to communicate the science. And we have managed to find a magic system that Rachel is excited about and a vibe that Rachel is excited about. So I'm happy to just jump right in, really. I'm all excited. One thing I wanted to ask as we jump in the previous parts, you've mentioned before that you really like Gothic stories and Gothic aesthetic, and I am 100% ready to jump in that boat. I just need you to tell me what it is. If you can describe that aesthetic for me.
Gothic literature there's very common themes that kind of encapsulate it. And it was kind of a response to Romantic literature, where Romantic literature just really romanticized love and nature and being out in the woods and the wild and Thoreau and like Walden and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Gothic literature was more like, there's wolves in those forests, like, yo. Right. That castle's haunted. What are you talking about? So it was kind of the response to Romanticism, the sort of dark side of it, in terms of literature. But there's common themes in Gothic literature that you can find basically in any story you pick up. There's decay, loss or corruption of innocence, corruption in general. There's usually some sort of nature component to it. So you're usually isolated somewhere like in the woods or on a mountaintop. There's also just unholy generally things. So vampires and playing God like Frankenstein. So Satan shows up sometimes, just chilling.
Just shows up.
Wuthering Heights is classic Gothic literature, except it's missing a component of the supernatural. Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro is also like classic Gothic style.
I can see Guillermo del Toro being kind of okay, I see it. I just watched his new Pinocchio. That was weird.
It's probably just based on the real stories, which were very messed up.
Which were very dark.
So it's and then there's other things that usually come into play that are common elements that you see. It's usually the corruption often happens by somebody trying to almost play God. So the corruption often happens when someone is trying to stop something. So when someone is being overbearing, overpowerful. So one of my favorite Gothic stories is The Hangman's Daughter. And this guy is this monk is so obsessed with this maiden's purity, her virginity, her everything, that he ends up killing her. So spoiler alert. if you haven't read this like 400-year-old book. He ends up killing her to preserve her purity. So he actually destroys the beauty in the world because he's so intent on maintaining her purity and her virginity and all that stuff. So that's a common theme of just there's this trying to play God, which actually ends up destroying the beauty.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Got it.
I love Gothic
Got it.
literature. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm learning lots. I'm learning lots. I did not have this in my repertoire before, but now I do. Now I do. Okay. Well, I think that puts us all in a particular tone ready to tell stories. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. This is a little roadmap to how we are going to structure our ideas about this story. Story is built up of 5 main things: conflict, what's happening in the story, characters, who is it happening to, goal, what are they trying to achieve, stakes, what happens if they don't, and action, what are they doing to achieve their goal. And so what we are going to do is we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming here, taking anything that like stuck in your memory from parts 1 through 3, which is a lot. I'm bursting with cool ideas. And we're going to brainstorm in each of these categories one at a time. And then later we can kind of pick our favorites in each category and construct a story that way, so that by the end, we should be able to craft a pitch, which kind of takes the form, because of conflict, character must take action in order to goal, or else stakes. It almost never ends up being that linear because we always have characters and conflicts and stakes that would make this one giant long sentence. So it never actually works out that way, but it's you know, it's the thought that counts. And so yeah, what we're going to do is just go through these, see what comes out, because often, I mean, I already have an idea of what I could do with this story, but doing this exercise, I always hear cooler ideas that you can mix and match. And then the thing at the end is just so much cooler than any one of us could have constructed alone. So I just love doing this bit where we combine all of our genius.
Story system.
Into something that may
Stories.
actually
Yes,
be genius.
story system.
Yeah.
It's a system. We are all connected. We shall all tell this story together. And because we get carried away, don't we, Clark?
Very much so.
And so I have a timer. I'm setting a timer. We have 4 minutes in each category. Yes, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you can actually come up with quite a lot in 4 minutes. So,
and we're going to try and get something from each of us, right?
Try and get something from each of us. And we're going to focus on one at a time. So we're going to do conflict first. Think of what is driving the story, what kind of interactions do we want to see, always keeping in mind the things that we're trying to communicate in this story. And yes. Ready?
Okay. Yeah. Are you
ready?
starting?
Am I starting? I should start, really, because I knew what was coming. That would be the fair thing to do. Yes, I can start.
Excellent.
Okay, ready? 4-minute timer, go. So because of what we talked about in the last part, I am visualizing like a Knives Out situation where you have like a unit, like a family unit or a group of friends or something, and they together make some kind of magic. And then someone comes in and just plants some seeds of doubt and needles and changes things around. Suddenly the magic system doesn't work. The magic isn't working quite that well. And it's all about this psychological kind of doubt and suspicion and backstabbing, manipulation. That's what I see.
Okay.
Somebody else go.
Yeah, one of the conflicts that has been bouncing around in my head is it is actually a blood feud between families.
Ooh,
Because I would be interested in exploring how the individual connections, as well as the connections to places and potentially the connections within the environment, are contributing or used to help deal with this blood feud. So, like how
interesting.
the environment and places and all of that affects people and vice versa. I am interested in that as a conflict.
Okay, Rachel, how about you?
As per brand, corruption. So something is eroding or corrupting the sort of wholesome connections that people have with other people as well as things. And we're not sure what's causing it. And it's up to the characters to figure out what's causing it and start implementing the systemic solution to fix it.
Okay. Okay.
I like it. I like it. That kind of, I guess it would fit in quite well. I this idea of a technology coming in and like replacing some of the connections is really stuck in my mind like a burr. So maybe this is along the same lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even a people. So there might be people that can influence connections, like few and far in between, but
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Technology or people or some sort of new
Mhm.
gene pops up that you can
Ooh.
DNA.
I don't know if this is just an extension of my conflict or a new conflict. I also like I'm interested in the idea of generational behaviors have built up and are starting to cause larger problems within this area and within this unit.
Ooh, yeah. Mm. Mm. Mm.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same as what I said or if that's a separate thing altogether, but that's another kind
No,
of
it's
interesting
It's in there
conflict.
now.
separate,
It's in
yeah.
there now.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump back to something that we talked about in the very first episode, which was that someone who is a systems like who is themselves a systems analyst and knows how to put people together to build a certain magical effect, which might actually go under character, but they get put into a situation where a systems analyst should have been called 10 steps ago, and then they have to fix things.
Oh, it's too
Because
real.
you said that she gets dropped in it all the time.
That is too
And
real.
so
Yeah. Mm.
Oh man.
Triggered.
Okay.
Yeah, that's sparking something in my head. I have to think for a second.
I wonder why.
Um, so then would the conflict be that they're expected to fix something that
Yeah.
Yeah.
has gotten way out of hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they get called in to help solve the blood feud, or maybe the story is they try more specific solutions, but in the end they have to come to a sort of systemic solution.
Yeah.
How are we on the 4 minutes? Do we have a little more?
Oh, the timer just went off.
Okay.
Wow,
Oh,
it's over.
okay.
It's dead.
So good, but look at all the different stories we could tell. It's very cool.
Okay. So then
And we're gonna
character.
we're gonna jump to characters, and then we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna filter and combine a little bit before we move on to goal and stakes. But character brainstorm, I think, is quite cool because then you could mix and match between the conflict and the character.
Yes.
Okay, so they don't need to line up with.
They don't have to
No.
line up. No, it'll go. This is like a new column, and then we'll mix and match later.
We'll mix and
Okay.
match. We'll meld. It's gonna get interesting.
Yes, yes, we'll meld indeed. So 4 minutes on the clock.
Okay.
Go.
I've got one. I don't know if it's
Okay.
because we were talking about Much Ado About Nothing before, or because I'm just already forming a whole plot in my head. I am interested in a married couple as characters,
Okay.
that what I think would be interesting. It's a married couple that has been married for a long time, and their magical effect is they quell aggression around them.
Like it. So if something's not quite right in the marriage, then everybody else starts going out of whack too, because
It's one of, yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't like my head. I was starting to form these things. I don't know if these people were part of the solution for the blood feud, if the blood feud would start because this was destroyed. But I like the idea of this couple where that's their effect, is they just have a calming presence on the
calming
people they're
presence.
around.
I like it.
Well, and then
Calming
what if,
presence.
oh, we could, oh, this is cool. We could incorporate death.
So write that down.
could
Write
incorporate
that down,
death.
and we can come back to that because we need characters right now.
Okay.
I will write. I will write
Incorporate
down.
death.
Yeah.
Maybe death
Yep.
is a character.
So the thing I was thinking
Rachel
was
wants death.
death always. I was thinking of that on a whole, on average, you can see the connections that you have, and then maybe weekly, vaguely the connections beyond that. But that's the scope with which you can see is quite narrow. But there are some people that are born that are able to see much farther out. So those are your systems analysts, your system scientists. They have if they and they may be able to see specific types of connections. So engineers are going to be able to see like mechanical systems way better.
Okay.
But people with high empathy are going to be able to see people connections way better, societal connections. So something like that. So someone with a strong sense view.
You want a character that can see more of the magic, that can see a larger piece of the magical web.
Yes.
Oh, what if we have like okay, I'm stuck on this Knives Out thing, but if you have like a detective who is one of these people who can like see connections.
Yeah, that'd be a cool story. Detective.
We also have system analyst. I don't know if that falls under what you're doing, Lovis, or Rachel's idea, but you had mentioned that in your
both.
conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this should actually be up here. You're right.
Another. Sorry, go ahead. Did you get a character out, Lovis?
Mine was going to be one that I wrote down in the first session, which was a journeyman, early cusp of career, not respected. I wonder where that came from. That was a tidbit dropped that I wrote down because it sounded like a character to me. So you can talk and I can type.
Another one I think would be interesting is somebody somebody who is resentful or who has been hurt. I'm thinking specifically somebody who has been hurt badly, potentially had a connection shattered.
Yeah. Or someone who is dealing with like depression that weakens their ability to form magical connections.
Yeah, there is somebody in pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, it's magical connection pain. I just want somebody who is in distress and uncomfortable and hurting. Because I'm a nice, friendly person.
Yeah,
Right?
I was like, you want that?
It's a nice, warm, fuzzy story.
My first business cards, I had my name and then I said literary sadist. So, that should tell you what you need to know.
Goodness. I also have written down an ordinary main character. Ooh, there's the time. An ordinary main character, no special powers, not particularly unique.
Yep.
But we wanted just chilling. We wanted somebody maybe who doesn't have these big magical effects, but
yeah, I think that could apply to pretty much. Maybe they can see them,
but they don't have them, or something like that.
Yeah, I think that could apply to pretty much everybody except the married couple, where I explicitly stated they have this.
Yeah.
This ability. Okay, so what's next?
I think that was a note I made when you said you liked it when the main character wasn't made out to be this big hero with special powers and stuff. It was just an ordinary person who's, gonna pit themselves against something much bigger.
Yeah. Ordinary people dropped into extraordinary situations.
Yes, exactly.
Is the story I like.
Okay, so those are our first two, and it's amazing. We had 8 minutes, and look what we came up with. So now, before we move on to goal and stakes, because goal and stakes are very much tied to the goal, and the goal is very much tied to which character and which conflict we choose. So if we can go through these and see which ones are calling us particularly, or if we can combine them, and satisfy lots of cool, and then match up a conflict with some characters. It can be more than one, can be loads if we have a group of friends or something, or a family unit or something like that. Yeah, so Rachel, what is sticking out to you as something that you would want to explore in a story? I'm assuming corruption is going to be in there.
Yeah. So, yeah, obviously figuring out what is corrupting the thing. It also may be that in our story, there are people, the special people, I guess, which is my favorite thing, but the people who can see further out, some of them start learning how to, maybe the active use of the connections starts being implemented. So someone with bad intentions is actually causing and someone with bad intentions who can see further out is sort of causing the corruption because they've learned how to maybe extract from the connections without putting back in. And then there's some opposing, someone who happens to be able to see farther, but they're just trying to like live their lives. Or they used to be able to, and they're depressed or something. I don't know.
My question is, why do you want them to be one of the special people? I know you like it when they're more ordinary. Why can't it just be an ordinary person that has just kind of a caustic effect? And they can know, because you know when you're messing with relationships, right? You know when you're damaging stuff. So they don't necessarily need to be able to see the whole web. Maybe they are just coming in and disrupting things. So I'm just curious why on one hand you really like ordinary people, but on this other hand you're talking about bringing in a very special person.
Well, I guess not special, but the corruption can be special. The main character doesn't have to be. Kind of like in Lord of the Rings, right? Sauron's a entity, but Frodo's just a guy. So
the villain can be special.
Yeah, the villain can be special. So I guess in my mind, it's more that it's if we're looking at systemic corruption, it's not like one node isn't usually going to cause systemic corruption, right? There has to be some way that they can cause a systemic corruption, or technology, that a new piece of technology has been invented and it's proliferated throughout our society and it's corroding. So either one of those. And then it's kind just of,
yeah. I like the image of someone who can see lots of connections, but maybe themselves doesn't have that many because they're nasty. They're a mean person. Comes in and they just get some kind of perverse joy out of like corroding inserting themselves into a group and corroding all of the
or they're resentful because they're journeymen. Sorry, we're making the journeyman the bad guy. Yeah, but someone who's resentful but can see those connections could probably do, like, if they're resentful that their connections aren't strong, but they figure out a way to extract from strong connections, that resentfulness can cause a lot of damage to whole systems.
My only resistance to that is just from something you had said before about how one of the lessons is that like systemic change doesn't come from one place, and now we're pinning it on one place. So
that's true.
What if I'm still very much liking my idea of this sort of blood feud building up, but what if what if the corruption that's happening is an attitude change that is building and starting to sour everything? So an example, something that's coming to mind is if the family is over the years adopting more and more of an elitist attitude, where there's a sense of superiority to their servants and stuff like that, and that's starting to affect the connections of everybody present, the connections to the estate, and potentially connections with their neighbors. It's just this small attitude thing that is slowly building on itself and making things worse and worse.
Yeah, like an entitlement or something. So one of the goals we can write down is to fix the corruption.
Yes, I think that's
Here
definitely
to
one of the.
identify and the
Yeah.
corruption.
I think
Like the
also,
blood feud.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think prevent the because Gothic is a lot of times very, at least the Gothic stuff I have seen is very much it's about family and about units, and there's often a lot of like decay of things that were great. So maybe
Yeah.
another one of the goals is they want to prevent the dissolution of the family name. So like that's part of the goal and the stakes there, right? Is if things are going, the family is heading towards bankruptcy, irrelevancy, and just becoming a bad household name, and they want to prevent that. And that's hard because that's a big systemic
Yeah.
goal. And how do you just do that? You can't just do one act of like, well, we saved an orphan, therefore nobody should hate us anymore. And like, yeah, well, you're still kind of dicks. So
And they have to reinsert themselves into the wider system of their society in order to.
Ooh, you just brought up a thing.
I brought up a thing.
what
I
is
brought
it?
up a thing.
What's the thing?
Well, there's there's oftentimes a sentiment that removing yourself from the system entirely into your little castle, like the Mask of the Red Death, um, is going to save you in the end, but ultimately it death comes for us all. It's more yeah, like I'm trying like there's a connection here with the family blood feud thing. Um,
I'm
of
starting.
just isolating themselves, but then realizing that that's draining them of their energy and their power. So they have to
Yeah.
like
Probably because when you isolate yourself, you reduce the number of connections, right? So
yeah.
everything that you need has to come from the few connections around you.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is probably draining each other.
Yeah.
Maybe they're reaching some end
I'm
of reserves.
Man, I'm starting to get a vibe that is sort of just like this agglomeration of Wuthering Heights, Crimson Peak, and Downton Abbey, where it's
Downton Abbey.
just kind of all meshed together. I'm picturing Downton Abbey because it's the whole abbey with all of the family and all of the servants and all of the people are important. And if part of the corruption is the connection not just amidst the parts of the family, but the family with their staff,
Yeah. Corruption of
which
the estate.
right, which is then going to affect the connections everybody has to the estate, which is reflected kind of in Crimson Peak, where they're deeply, at
Ooh.
least the sister is deeply connected to the house.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And the
that can
house starts
become,
falling apart.
Yeah.
and the house is starting to fall apart because of the nature of these connections and stuff like that.
And the estate is suffering. Maybe the river that was flowing through the estate isn't flowing so good anymore or
Yeah,
something.
the repairs aren't holding as long, and I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that's forming into my mind. But
Oh, I like it. It's very kind of magical realism esque.
Yes. So yeah, the thing I'm kind of thinking about here is um I like that married couple. We can have a non-gothic ending, which is more of a comedy type ending, right? It's a happy ending. But it can have those gothic elements. Or unless we want a sad ending, that's just everything's corrupted and it falls apart. Um
I
that's
don't
not
know.
like well, I think one of the messages we were hoping to impart from the first parts was this sort of positivity where systems do fall apart, but you can rebuild them. So maybe there was a married couple that had brought peace to some area of the world, but one of them died, and they lost the one that was left, the widow or the widower lost that capacity, and it the families that were part in this area then dropped into feuding basically,
yeah,
and that then created the effects of the land is decaying, the soil is poisoned, the buildings are falling apart no matter how much they try to repair them, the crops aren't growing, like all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
then maybe the widow or widower is somehow able to regain a sort of power, maybe by connecting to their dead spouse in some way, because ghosts and death and being connected to our ancestors is also a common theme in Gothic literature. So maybe they're able to, after being depressed or angry or resentful, for so long, they're able to tap into their spouse in some other magical, ethereal way and start restoring, they'll start working with each of the families to rebuild those connections, restoring the land and the estate. I don't know.
I have a thought. So what if the married couple are effectively they were the matriarch and patriarch of this house,
Yeah.
and they are now elderly, but whoever died, the widow slash widower, blames somebody on staff for the death.
Ooh.
And that started the schism between the family and the staff. Not to the point that they were like going to get rid of them, but like in their heart they resent it, and that built up, that damaged the
The
relationship there.
resentment. Yeah.
That resentment damaged the relationship between the two of them, who used to be very close. And then people started taking sides, like the staff took side of the staff person, the family took side with the matriarch or whatever, and that has just continued to decay and corrode the what was a unified connection between everybody in this estate. Like at one point, it was a place where the farmhand felt as much as though it was his land and his estate as the patriarch's son, and now that is completely lost, and it feels like everybody's stuck in this decaying place where it's this like I'm stuck in this decaying place, kind of on a war front that's about to break out. Um, I don't know.
I I wonder if we need someone to like a new person to come in and like
Mm,
shake things up a bit for them to even realize that this is happening. And to like maybe whoever's left,
yeah.
say it's a widower, um, maybe he needs a carer because he's getting old.
Hmm.
And that person maybe can see, maybe they're
Yeah.
one of these systems
I'm
people who can see and they're like, whoa, this is not good.
I'm thinking
This is
maybe
bad.
I'm thinking maybe like a nurse and a detective, like because multiple people can show up. But like,
Yeah.
what if one of the people is newlywed and they newlywed a detective? And then I don't know. So because then these new relationships are forming and they can come in and through their own connections start.
Yeah.
Or
Because
yeah,
Or
like
like a
Wuthering
family
Heights.
counselor.
Yeah, or like Wuthering Heights though, it's the newer generations start building that wholesome, pure bond that kind of regenerates or um, heals the sins of the past. So
right. And there's some people who have enough experience with things. Part of the reason I was thinking the detective and the nurse is like the nurse can be attending the health, which will help with the connection with staff. A detective can be somebody who comes in and is like, look, we need to talk about guilt and forgiveness, which I know is a really weird thing to be hearing to like be lectured on from a detective. But trust me, like when you've seen shit, when you've
Yeah.
failed at shit, like you've got to cope with these things or have them break you.
And maybe, yeah, you can combine these. So maybe the like one of the grandchildren gets married and whoever they marry is the nurse
yeah,
or the detective or something. They bring in
yeah,
someone new and
yeah.
the new perspective on the family. It's like when you're like, oh yeah, my family traditions, they're normal, right? And then you bring someone new in and you're like, this isn't normal.
Right,
I can see that now.
right. And then the story would like probably be this would be very interesting, honestly, as a story told over a series of short stories or novellas. Um,
Yeah, like almost like a serialized form,
yeah,
like a TV show,
because
TV
if we
series.
really want to introduce that like it's cumulative and it's not done by one person, just doing it in a short section of time isn't going to work, but doing those short stories of like before they're married, the new person comes in, you start having these little stories where you show the connections starting to improve and strengthen and these points of conflicts that are coming from that, and you slowly get to see the family unit repairing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of like one of the grandchildren, like if they marry someone who is more of a source of light, who has strong connections and energy and magic that's coming in, um, and then starts, because as a spouse, you give energy to your spouse. She starts, or he, whatever it is, starts creating these sort of pockets of light
Hmm.
on the estate. Um, that
Yeah.
start mending these connections. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I like that because and it would need to be handled carefully so that it's not just this person came in and fixed everything, right? Because
Yeah.
if you put a light into a smothering atmosphere, it's very easy for the light to be extinguished. But it's also possible for it to show up and it starts lighting these other places, which then are like, oh, this is kind of nice. I'm gonna try and do that over here too.
Yeah. And it's actually having someone, ooh, having somebody be, you know, the nurse has the connection with the patriarch. And
yep.
then, maybe she starts asking some questions, and then that sends somebody else off to ask questions elsewhere. And that, like, all these like ripple effects
Yeah.
outwards, so that it's the little effects that everybody is making, all the questions that everybody is asking. So it's not just one main
Yeah.
character, it's like multiple perspective
Oh man.
And
story.
that's where you could do some of the Downton Abbey stuff, where you can do these short stories, each focusing on a different person, a different conflict from a different time. Because at one point you're looking at a servant who's like dealing with some situations from the war and trying to do like they're trying to give up
The
a
war.
quest of revenge or something like that.
The war.
But you can jump all over the place and show it like gradually improving and how these small decisions are granting people new minor powers as they go forward that are then starting to build on themselves.
Yep.
This sounds like a slow burn character drama, which is not really my vibe, but it's very interesting.
Is it your vibe, Rachel? Because that's all that matters.
Yeah, I do tend to like shows like that.
I think a magical backdrop like this though would be enough to pull me through.
Yeah, you can grasp onto the magic system and hold on tight while
Yeah.
while um everybody else gets drawn into the psychological character drama.
Yeah. The only thing I would want, like for sure, is that somehow they're able to bring in the either by like there's some way to connect to our dead. So I want to bring in whatever that the dead spouse
Mm-hmm.
bring in their connection, or some like maybe the dead spouse's ghost is all around this estate, and that's creating some sort of like poison type thing,
Ooh.
and they're able to release it without releasing the connection, but we release the ghost, but her or his magic still like invigorates you. The people that
Like
you've
that.
known, the people that you've known and loved still have positive effects on you even when they're gone. They put magic into you.
Also,
So
what if one of the people who shows up, because we kind of have a couple people showing up, um, what if one of them is alive because of actions taken by the dead
yeah,
head of the house?
I was thinking about that earlier too.
So they
That's so they
come
have
in
that
as
connection.
staff and they automatically have that connection of like you're being kind of mean and rude to me, but I personally feel like I owe your family a lot because I would be dead if they hadn't done this thing.
Yeah.
And then as that comes out and they share that, that allows them to start reforging some of those connections, um, so that this this widow slash widower is able to start seeing like I shouldn't. I have been resenting to you because I feel like you ended the story, but to a certain extent, you guys are part of their legacy
Mm-hmm.
as much as my children, and that would
Yeah.
be really cool.
That would be a very heartwarming ending, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I like this idea of like um having, because you still invest and you still input, so you still have the connection, but you're not getting anything back because that person has died. So there's these just like floating strands that maybe have some kind of negative magic as well. um and if we need to like release a ghost, if there's the ghost on the other side, that could be a really cool interaction part of the magic system.
Yeah,
And,
it could.
and
Oh,
what
that
needs to
could.
happen is that floating strand needs to connect to another person,
Yeah,
which
Yeah,
because
could
the
a
be a
ghost
living
cannot
person.
thing.
give anything back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if something terrible happens, or if you have a very serious loss, and then you meet somebody who has gone through that same thing or lost that same thing, I'm kind of picturing like you have these two people who have these wispy floating strands, and then they find out that they have that connection through this person, and then they
Yeah,
just
and they
snap
can
together and
connect the
instantly have a
strands.
really strong bond of just this person you deeply cared about. I deeply
Yeah.
cared about them too, and now we are strongly connected, just like that.
Yeah, it's like it
Yeah,
That adds a
it's
whole new
and
aspect and
it
dimension to this
does.
web. Like,
yeah.
It
it's super
does.
cool.
And it's like it's almost like a tether keeping the ghost there. And
Mhm.
once you snip the tether, the ghost can release. So like as you
Wow.
move through all these little stories, you're snipping tethers, and eventually the ghost is free, and all the
Yeah.
tethers kind of connect to other people.
Yeah.
Oh,
But if
I
you
that's
love
so
it.
if you
cool.
don't if you don't have something to like that's what it like maybe it's something along the lines of you can try and snip a tether to a ghost because the ghost is just extractive
Hmm.
basically. Um
You have to let it go.
You
yeah, you
have
have
to
to let
let
it
it go.
go, but
You have to
also
let the connection go.
if like it creates because you have such a strong connection to this person that you have the ghost connection with, you have this really big like a thick I would think like a thick connection
Yeah.
that just would you have to be able to connect it to something else and it can happen very quickly. So instead of like just what like Clark was talking about, if you find somebody that you can snap that connection to, you automatically have a stronger bond starting out than
Mm-hmm.
if you just met off the street and tried to
Yep.
build a relationship over time. So you can um yeah, I just wanted to
Oh,
clarify that in my head. That's cool.
I love that.
I love this so much. I really do.
It's so cool.
Like,
Just
if somebody
ghosts.
did, like, this is a series of short
Ghosts.
stories that I feel could make me cry over and over and over again, like, in just
This
the
would be
best
an
way.
awesome TV show. You
Oh
could
It
just
man.
would.
imagine people walking around with these floating tethers, but nobody can see them except themselves and people who are these who can see the system further out. And they just see people walking around with all the baggage that they're holding onto and all the memories that they're holding onto.
Well, and just
Oh,
that moment of surprise of I'm just talking with a person and all of a sudden, boom, this connection is there between us. I'm
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Oh.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment of like, do we nurture this connection or is this something that we're gonna quietly let
Yeah.
go?
Yeah. Well, and
Huh.
that's like, when you meet people that you feel you're like, I've known you my whole life and I just met you. It could
Yeah,
explain stuff like that, like soul bonds,
it does,
soulmates,
yeah.
and things,
Yeah.
soul friends.
Okay. So
Wow.
that's super cool. And I think we came up with a really cool story. I just want to try and condense it down. I don't know if
Yeah.
we can because we just plotted out an entire TV series.
Yeah.
But because of conflict, character must take action in order to goal uh, or else stakes. So because of a well, actually it's
It's of a death
Because of a
that,
because of
death
a death.
decades ago,
Yes.
right? Because of a
Because
death, or even just years ago. Because of a
yeah,
because of
death
a
years
years
ago.
death
ago.
years ago, a blood feud.
I don't know that we can call it a blood feud at this point. I
Yeah, it's
I
just
do
a
think
feud.
just I do think
Feud.
a family estate
Has broken into conflict.
Yeah.
has fallen into conflict and decay.
Yeah. A once thriving
Yeah.
family estate.
A once thriving conflict and decay. They must re
Reconnect with each other. The main things we hit
And
were
the
like
earth. Yeah.
reconnect with each other,
And the land.
and the land
and the
and
land.
let go of the ghosts of the past in order to save
The estate.
the
I think just in order to save them all, really.
Save them all.
so dramatic. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Gothic, man.
Because of a death years ago, a once thriving family estate has broken into conflict and decay. They must reconnect with each other and the land and let go of the ghosts of the past in order to save them all.
That's
I
gothic as
like it.
shit.
I
Yeah.
like it.
I
That's
now know what
Gothic
Gothic
AF.
is.
Yeah.
Is this because I like it? Maybe I like this the whole genre that I didn't know I liked.
Oh man, I got books for you.
This
Oh, I'll take
has
them.
a happy lift at the end that not all Gothic has. Just be aware of that.
Yeah, well,
Oh
Okay,
man.
maybe
yeah.
ease me into the Gothic.
Oh, that's
I like
cool.
this so much. I guess the only test that it needs to pass is whether Rachel thinks that this story will communicate the things that she would like to communicate about system science and seeing things as a system and not as singular bits that operate in a vacuum.
Um, so definitely, so the thing we're trying to say is that not one thing can break a whole system, but there can certainly be a catalyst. So like,
Mhm.
the invention of the steam engine was certainly a catalyst for the Industrial Revolution. But so the death is this catalyst, and then if we communicate, that it's a sort of systemic breakdown of relationships and the land, that there was something beautiful, something light that was the foundation for all that, which is that married couple, their love and what they imbued across the land. That light has broken, it's gone, and now we're starting to see the systemic decay of that, um, through the different relationships people have. So
And
yeah,
then we
so if
build
we
it back up
yeah,
through
so if we
those little relationships.
yeah, we show if we can convey the decay as many inputs over time, and then the rebuilding as many inputs over time.
Right.
Even if there's catalysts for those inputs, that's
Right.
okay. But
Because the thing is, the decay isn't the death. The death didn't actually cause it. It was everybody's
yeah,
reaction to
Yeah.
the death,
Yeah.
and it was the reaction building up over years. And that's something you would have to show. That's hard to capture
yeah,
in the pitch.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
yeah, but then reconnect. So they must reconnect with each other. So rebuilding the connections is actually what solves the problem. Rebuilding healthy connections, letting go of unhealthy connections to ghosts in the past and things like that. Yeah, so we're getting the theme of decay over time, as well as building up over time to the system, unhealthy and healthy connections inside of the system. What
It
else is
won't just
there?
be one person that
No.
solves this, that comes in and says that you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this. And then it's
Yeah.
all fine.
Yeah, it'll be everyone.
It'll be everyone.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the land and the
And the
things
land.
on the land, the animals, all that.
Yeah. And it'll start in small ways from like things of I don't know. Sorry, I'm there's cool stuff you could do where small things like there's an accident that happens, and because of the connection to the land, luck just so happens so that what could have been really bad isn't too bad at all.
Yeah.
It's
And then
just a
late,
shock.
yeah, like I'm thinking somebody falls through the roof and they don't fall on the tools, they fall on the hay right next to the tools.
Yeah.
Where several years prior someone had been like horribly mangled by some piece of farm equipment.
Right, right.
Right.
And they might
That's
even have an example of that. They're like, oh man, like
That's
and then that can even build to the point where there's towards the end there's a bigger threat that comes in, and very clearly magical defenses come into play to protect the family, and the family's like, oh shit, we thought this was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're okay. We're
Yeah.
gonna be okay.
We're gonna be okay. Yeah, so just that, yeah, conveying. I think
Nice.
it does. What else were our themes? You can make stuff better through small systemic changes, small just investing in your good connections with people and the things around you. You can't fix systems alone, I think is another theme here. There is no silver bullet. There is not going to be one thing that fixes this estate.
It also shows that everything is connected, right? It's not just the
Mhm.
people, it's also them to the land and to the estate.
Yeah.
And depending on how you wanted to do it, it could
To the
it
dead.
could to the dead and potentially reaching outside their estate as well. But yeah.
So yeah, if their estate is starting like to poison stuff next to it as well, can show that. But yeah, I think
So creepy. I love it.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, since we have approval, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Oh man, and that is so different from anything we have made before.
It is super different. It is so different than anything we have
good.
made before. which is something that I love about doing these spells and specialists episode. Every episode is completely different from what we've done before.
Yeah,
It's really cool. And on that happy note, I think we're at a point where we stop, which is sad because this is super fun. But maybe there's a viewer or a listener out there who would like to write this story, and feel free to. I mean, this is there for you, and there are so many different stories that could be written from that pitch and from these ideas that we have just brainstormed.
Yes.
So if something in here connects with you and your creativity, go for it. But just let us know you've done it. If you've done it, please let us know, because we want to read it. And I guess all that's left is for me to thank Rachel so much for joining us on
thank you.
Spells and Specialists. I've had a wonderful time. And we created a really cool story and a really cool magic system. So now hopefully you have a bit of more of a behind the scenes view of what your husband does all day.
Yeah.
And
it's really cool.
Have found your little window into being like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. Well, I had a really great time. Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And of course, thank you so much to my co-host Clark. And you can find more about the way we built the magic system and his whole process over on the MagicEngineer. And you should like and subscribe over there. And
be sure to like and subscribe to Ecofictology while you're here.
Yeah.
While you're here, you might as well push the little button. You might as well. And I think that's it. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add?
Just thank you so much for having me on, even though I'm not really a specialist. I really appreciate you guys listening to me and letting me create this, or helping me create this really cool system that even I could enjoy.
Even you.
Even
you're
I.
Absolutely a specialist.
I think you're a specialist.
The main difference is that a lot of times we try and get people who are specialists and storytellers, and she reads a lot more nonfiction than she does fiction. It's very hard to get her to read fiction.
Yes.
But it's nice to know that this method works for people who are not
which is super cool
in stories all the time.
Yeah. So if you're a specialist but maybe hesitant about trying to tell a story or writing a story, just know that they walked me through the process, and I am not a native storyteller. So reach out to them if you would like to do one of these.
Please.
Yes, please do.
Please reach out to us. Any kind of specialty will do.
Yeah.
We are interested in all of it. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up before I keep blabbering on about this, that, and the other. As we tend to do. Thank you very much for being here, and I will see you next time,
Right.
ecofictologists.